My name's Frank, and this week's focus is on America. America is one of the most important wine-producing countries in the world, but we rarely see the quality wines in the UK amongst the sea of mass-produced entry-level wines. Almost every state is producing wine across America, but the majority comes from California, which makes just over 80% of the country's wine. In fact, if California was a standalone country, it would still feature in the top 10 wine-producing countries by volume. In this video, we're going to look at why California is so important and its continued rise in popularity, as well as touching on some of the other key states like Oregon, Washington, and New York State. What we would consider viticulture today started in 1830s, when European vines, Vitis vinifera, were taken across to America and planted instead of their indigenous vines. Unknown at the time was that these American vines had built up a tolerance to phylloxera. It's a little louse that eats the rootstocks of the vines. When these cuttings were taken back to Europe, they nearly wiped out wine across the whole continent. Only through grafting European vines onto American rootstock was a solution reached, and this still happens to this day. The next issue to affect American wine was prohibition. Thankfully, through some loopholes, winemakers were able to continue supplying by supplying to the church. But after Prohibition and the Great Depression, consumption of quality wine decreased and the need for bulk production increased. This was until the 1970s when a new wave of winemakers took over and completely changed the face of American wine. In 1976, the top estates of California went up against the top chateaus of Bordeaux and Burgundy in a blind tasting competition called the Judgment of Paris, with a committee of the best wine tasters, esteemed wine writers, and top critics. With one flight of Cabernet Sauvignon and one flight of Chardonnay, it was America that came out on top, proving that there is quality on the other side of the pond. This competition was repeated in 2006, with America winning again, just for anyone who had any doubts. Throughout California, wine is an important part of life and trade. Beautiful rolling hills with miles after miles after miles of vineyards, about 600 miles north to south. Blessed with plenty of sunshine to ensure super ripe grapes and with the ability to irrigate crops to mitigate any issues around drought, growing conditions couldn't be better. The Napa Valley is probably one of the most sought after areas across California, producing top-class wines from well-known grape varieties like Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Sauvignon Blanc, and Chardonnay, all with an American twist. The area benefits from the mist and fog that creeps up from the San Francisco Bay, which helps keep the vineyards nice and cool until the afternoon. This helps retain acidity and freshness in the grapes, which leads to wines with beautiful balance. Where the mist and fog is the thickest in the south, in the area of Los Carneros, you'll find oak-aged creamy Chardonnays and ripe, juicy Pinot Noirs, often blended together to make a fantastic traditional method sparkling wine to rival the styles from Champagne. Moving a little bit further north into areas like Stag's Leap, Rutherford, and Oakville, where you'll find big, bold Cabernets and Cabernet blends suitable for long-term storage. Some from some top European winemakers who have seen the quality available in the Napa Valley, like Dominus, which is the same winemaking team from Petrus, and Opus One from the Rothschilds. In Napa and throughout California, you can find some interesting Sauvignon Blancs called Fume Blanc. These are oak-aged Sauvignon Blancs that are much richer and more full-bodied than your styles from the Loire Valley or Marlborough. The phrase Fume Blanc was coined by Robert Mondavi in the late 1960s to indicate this style of oak-aged Sauvignon Blanc, which he modelled on the whites being made in Bordeaux. Just over the mountains to the west, you'll find Sonoma, very similar in style to the Napa Valley, just a little bit lighter in body. Plenty more Cabernet Sauvignon being produced, especially in areas like Alexander Valley, but also some beautifully light, elegant Pinot Noirs from Russian River. A little bit closer to the coast, you'll find some more Rhone varietals like Syrah and Viognier. Another grape that comes into its own in Sonoma is Zinfandel. It's now the state's signature red grape variety, and you can expect characteristics of black cherries, licorice, and raisin. You may know it by its original name of Primitivo, found in the southern part of Italy. Same grape, just different name. And it's actually thought to have its origins in Croatia under a name I'll never be able to pronounce. A lot of Zin in Sonoma and in Lodi, another very famous area for Zinfandel, has very, very old vines, usually dating back over 100 years, and this helps concentrate the fruit and intensify the wine. Moving outside of California, the next top state is Oregon, where we can find some outstanding and exciting Pinot Noirs and Pinot Gris. With a slightly wetter climate versus California, you can expect the wines to be a little bit lighter and more elegant. That certainly doesn't mean that they're lacking in any complexity. The top region of Willamette Valley has a very similar growing condition to Burgundy, although you can still tell that you're drinking an American wine due to that super ripe, powerful, fruit-forward style. Moving further north into Washington State, you'll find a whole range of different styles being made, from your fruit-forward, simple Cabernet Sauvignons from the Columbia Valley, to dry aromatics of Riesling in the Yakima Valley, and everything else in between. There's a lot to explore in Washington, from your everyday drinkers to your high-end single vineyard wonders. Finally, jumping over to the East Coast for the rising star of New York State. The majority of the top vineyards are based around the Finger Lakes. These long, thin, but deep lakes help regulate the temperature, releasing necessary heat across the vineyards in areas that would otherwise be considered too cold for quality production. For me, this is the area of most excitement at the moment, with amazing aromatics like Riesling, Pinot Gris, and Gewurz, and some savoury reds from Cabernet Franc. Another country with plenty to offer and lots to explore. I encourage you to talk to your wine merchants to find out what gems they have, as all you'll find in the supermarkets are wines from the giant wine lake of mediocrity that is the Central Valley in California. The more demand we have for these wines, the greater chance we have of stocking a wider range. As always, I hope you're enjoying the videos. Stay safe, and any questions to events@averys.com. Cheers.